Okay, this is another Gate Ruler deck profile. I haven't really made a name for it. I don't know exactly how to describe it. I'll probably make up some random name for it in the for the video title. But this one is focusing mostly on Atlas and Wonderverse, so blue pink, and it's focusing more on the superior for Wonderverse for Captain Ed, and then using his ability to use the events from Wonderverse. It is an Overlord build, so Overlord is just one of the more consistent types of decks to build, where it allows you to play, like the higher cost cards, at a lot cheaper. And then a 60 cost count is actually pretty easy to maintain, even though you have to pay, one for all of your zeros and everything else. But so we'll get into the deck profile. So the first card we have again, the first one is for Starship Captain Ed. So when he comes into play, either by touchdown or even his counter ability, he deals 5 damage to a unit, which can be good for clearing out most units. Moving forward into set 6, 5 damage may not be enough, because a lot of units that they've been showing have been having 6 HP. But we'll just have to see as the rest of the set plays out to see how relevant that 6 HP actually becomes. But anyway, for this deck build, we're also taking advantage of his Space Archaeology, which is the once per turn you can DR3 and then choose a Wonderverse event in your graveyard, and you can play it without paying its cost, and then it gets removed from the from play instead of going back to the graveyard. So we'll go over at the end, when we go over the events, we'll go over the different ones that Ed can target. Next, we are running for Shadow of Hades. So this is from the first set. It has 3 strikes, so it's very strong for trying to get in through damage. It does have 5 clearing power. We're not actually using its Abyssal Concerto. There are variants that you probably could slide in some Abyss Summoners, but we're not actually running a lot of Darkness units, so that's actually the reason. But we're taking advantage of his ability to special summon an Owl level 0 as a form of a defense. Because if you hit it off of him for a counter, or you can even just set up the defense when you just play him from your hand. For our legends, we have 1 Masashi and 1 Captain Liberty. Captain Liberty could easily be replaced with Schrodinger's cat, but because some people may not have access to it, I've decided to use Captain Liberty, and it also throws off the deck count. The one thing I always find difficult with cards like, when trying to put in cards like Schrodinger's cat, is I end up having to make weird numbers where you get 1 or 2 copies of other cards just to fit around that 3 cost. But with Captain Liberty and Masashi, it makes it an easy 2 and 2, so an even number. So when you make when you play sets of things, it makes things a lot easier. And for me, that's just my OCD kicking in. But for some, there's other variants. You could actually change out Liberty for Schrodinger's cat. You just have to mess with the numbers for the other cards. Both are just very good though, so that's why we're playing both. And we have ways to get Captain Liberty out of the damage zone, and as well as Masashi, just a very efficient legend. Next we have 4 Lady of the Grails. This card is a good defensive card. It's very good, especially against Trickster decks, especially because Trickster can't actually go through her, because Trickster only has 3 attack, and she has 4 toughness, or 4 HP. So she's very good for that. And again, because she has the ability to reduce damage by 1 for every instance that you take damage, it's very good against cards like the Trickster burn deck, or any form of burn for that matter. And it also makes it where your opponents have to waste resources trying to get rid of her first before trying to get through to you. So this card is easily replaceable. If you are playing against a lot of people that may not be running Trickster, or maybe not be running Burn in general, you could easily replace this card, with other level 2s, or even, again, change the numbers up, since you do have to work with the cost of 60. But it is also good at defense, as you can just summon it from that when you're directly attacked. Next, we also have 4 A7 Cheshire Cat. So similar to Lady of the Grail, it's a defensive unit. We're taking advantage that usually we're only using like 2 resources during our turn, so we have a third one for our ruler that we can play these unit-based reactions, since, you know, with Overlord you cannot play events during your opponent's turn. Next, we have 4 Specialist Bullseye Wolf. So this is just a very good card in general, especially since it's been seeing a lot of play in the burn decks, because of its ability to just do 1 damage. So we're actually using it for that same type of ability, where we're using it as like just another form of damage if we really need to. And if you want to go like the darkness build for like Hades, you could easily replace this with like Niblung, the starter deck one that counts as 2 darkness cards. But next we have 4 Mutilated Goblin. So this is from the starter deck, the zombie one. So the reason we're running is because it's an owl, and it's also a 2 strike for being a 0 cost. We also have 4 Banshees, another owl card, another target for Hades, as well as being 4 HP, so it's a good card to shove in the defense. Even though most units will have, you know, like 4, it's just good to have so that way he doesn't get around like the smaller units, you know, with like 3 HP or 3 attack or 2 attack. And again, it is a darkness, so if you want to add the darkness route, you have that option to replace, like, say, the Bullseye Wolf with Niblung, and then you can have Banshee as well for other darkness targets. We also have 4 Forest Fairy, so another owl card that you can target with Hades. It's probably the best one to do because in the defense zone, it also nullifies Breakthrough. And again, Breakthrough is the ability of when your opponent's unit goes through if it can destroy this unit, you're still going to take the strike damage. So like the Genesis Summoning decks that have like Alba Volts, you know, since Genesis Summoning is still a pretty popular archetype, Forest Fairy can be really good for just, you know, shoving it in defense that, you know, your opponent has to, you know, again, waste to attack. And being 5 HP in this format is pretty relevant. And the last 4 units we have is 2 Black Cat Sits. So this lets us increase our level limit, as well as it's also an owl, as well as a darkness. But we're mostly using it for like that semi-heal effect, because we want to get all our zeros out of our damage for Hades, as well as any potential events for Captain Ed. So for our events, the first one we have is for Schrodinger's Cat. So this will act as like a pseudo heal. Just one thing to note, that if you do play cards, like if you want to play like Masashi, or say you use this to swap Ed into the damage, you don't actually get the touchdown or overdrive abilities. So same thing with like special Bullseye Wolf. If you play him from there, you won't get the 1 damage. And the card specifically says that too, that you don't get that ability. But this is just a pseudo heal that allows us to take advantage of like Ed. So when you actually hit this off of the damage, this is one of those cards where you want to start thinking about what cards you want to take out of your damage and what cards you're fine leaving in there. So like with Hades is actually one where if you trigger Schrodinger Cat off of its counter, putting Hades in the damage zone is usually not that bad, since his deck doesn't really Abyssal Summoning, meaning once he's in, you know, the graveyard, he doesn't serve much purpose other than maybe potentially being removed from play for Captain Liberty. But Schrodinger's Cat, you can also replace, like, there have been ways where you can replace, you hit a Schrodinger's Cat off of counter and you put a second copy of Schrodinger's Cat into the damage, so that way when you like set up your Ed, you can use Ed to play the Schrodinger's Cat from the graveyard, target the one in the damage, and then play another card, so it's like you pseudo healed 2. Next we're running 2 fully charged Photon Cannon. This is actually the main card I had originally started building the deck around. I didn't even have like Hades or anything, or any of that part. I actually was running like the burn package that you would find in like a trickster burn deck. But I just wanted to fully use this card because it is a pseudo damage where it deals 4 damage to an enemy unit in the defense zone and then deals 1 damage to your opponent. So it's kind of like a 2-for-1 where you deal a damage as well as get rid of their unit in the defense zone. But there are some decks that are very aggressive where usually they may not have a defense zone unit, or they may not have one that this can kill. So Also, a lot of decks are running more Sentinel summoning, so like Cheshire Cat, where because this is mostly you could set it and you could use it. Okay, and it would have to be used during your turn because you're an Overlord deck. But normal times you just want to hold into your hand because of potential set destruction. So because of that, a lot of times it just like sits in your hand. And then it doesn't really do much. So that's why I lowered it down to 2. But can still be very good occasionally to just get rid of units in the defense zone. We're also running the 2 paths. So this card is just basically a draw card if you hit out of the counter. And it mostly has like a draw when you run low on cards. This card could easily be replaced for 2. I originally had it with 2 more black cat sets. But again, I didn't feel that 4 cat sets was like warranted because I didn't really need that much extra cost. So that's why I just have like 2 paths. But again, you can always switch it. And this card is also another target for Ed as well. We're also running 2 Well of the Id. So this card, let's just swap out damage. So a lot of times we want to take out our level 0s from our damage and just get them out of there. And potentially hit better targets into the unit, into the damage zone for Schrodinger's cat. The last card we have is for Tractor Beam. So this card you find a lot of times in the burn deck, where you can bring back, like your bullseye wolves back to your hand, and you can just play them. But because again with Overlord, we have to pay 1 every time we play a card, even if they're all level 0s, because of the way that the ruler works. But a lot of times the Tractor Beam, you'll be using it for its special summoning ability. So you can add the unit to your hand, or you can special summon it. So a lot of times we'll be targeting, like Forest Fairy or Banshee to just put into the damage, or sorry, into the defense zone, so that way you can use that as a defense for the next turn. So with that, that is the deck list for, I guess we'll probably call it something around like Captain Ed. But this is more of like a, not so much a control deck, but it is where you are slowly building advantage. You're trying to keep up defenses a lot, and then slowly pushing damage through. And then there are versions of this deck that again you can swap out certain cards for your preferences, or if you don't have certain cards, you can always replace other cards. And then as always, the deck list will be in the description below. And if you have any comments or if you have any questions, you can always feel free to ask, and then I'll get to them as soon as possible. And then at some point, when we get our set 4, I will probably be doing a lot more videos than I've been doing in the past couple weeks. Because there just hasn't been many decks that I've been wanting to try, and a lot of people have already made those decks that have posted them online or through like different forums. So I don't feel a need to build any like decks that have already been out there. But with that, thank you for watching, and then I'll see you guys in the next one.